I came back from my overseas assignment earlier than expected. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not my friends. And certainly not Derek. I wanted it to be a surprise, something sweet after months apart. A moment that would make him smile. We hadn't seen each other in over 90 days. Between project delays, tight deadlines, and overnight calls from Dubai, I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to breathe in New York air. So I booked an earlier flight, landed that morning, and drove straight from JFK to the Catskills, where Derek had said he'd be fixing up the family cabin for the weekend. I thought I'd walk in and find him with paint on his jeans, maybe sipping a beer with music in the background. I even stopped at a little cafe on the way to pick up his favorite apple pie. That's how sure I was that this would be a good surprise. But as I turned onto our road, I slowed down. There were too many cars. Lined up along the gravel driveway. Parked on the grass. Some I recognized. Most I didn't. And then I saw them, blue and pink balloons tied to the porch railings. A banner fluttering gently in the wind that read, "Welcome our little miracle, baby girl Wells." My hands tightened around the steering wheel. A chill ran through me. Even though the sun was still shining. I parked a street away. Something in my chest told me not to walk in with that pie in my hands like some clueless fool. So I left it on the passenger seat. As I approached, I could hear the music. Laughter. Someone shouting congratulations, through the open door. My heart was racing now. The front door wasn't even shut. And when I stepped inside, it felt like time stopped. There were streamers. Flowers. A table stacked with gifts and pastel decorations. People mingling with glasses of lemonade and small plates of cake. And in the center of it all, standing in a flowing white dress, was my sister. Brianna. Very pregnant. She was glowing. 6, maybe 7 months along. She was smiling wide. Talking to one of our aunts. Our mother stood beside her, arranging napkins and serving drinks. "He's been painting the nursery every weekend," I heard Brianna say. "Did he pick out the color?" Aunt Margaret asked. She laughed softly. "Of course. Pale lavender." He said it matched her name. My stomach dropped. And then Derek walked in from the kitchen. Holding 2 glasses. He went straight to her, wrapped his arms around her from behind, and gently placed his hands on her belly. My legs refused to move. My heart refused to accept it. That's when my mother saw me. Her face turned ghost white. She rushed over, nearly tripping on a corner rug. "Vanessa," she whispered. What are you doing here?" I didn't respond. "I thought you weren't back until next week," she said again, voice trembling. "Can we step outside for a second?" I pulled my arm away. And that's when the room fell silent. Brianna saw me. Her face drained of color. Derek froze, still holding her belly. I took one long, deep breath and said just loud enough for the whole damn room to hear. "So this is what you've been doing while I was designing cities in Dubai?" For a moment, no one moved. The music kept playing in the background, some light acoustic tune about love and new beginnings, but it sounded warped, distant. Like it didn't belong in the same universe as the truth unraveling in front of me. Derek's hands dropped from Brianna's belly. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Vanessa," he finally managed. I can explain." I held up a hand. "Please. Don't insult what's left of my intelligence." My sister stood there like a statue. No tears, no apologies. Just that stunned look people wear when their lies get caught midair. "I take a red-eye home to surprise my fiancé," I said, slowly turning to face the crowd. "And I walk into a gender reveal party for a baby I didn't know existed." "A baby you made with my sister." I heard someone gasp. Probably Aunt Margaret again. She always loved drama. "Vanessa, please." My mother said, stepping closer. "Let's not do this in front of everyone." I turned to her. "Oh, you mean in front of all the people who knew and still clapped anyway?" Her eyes darted away. That told me everything. "Derek?" I looked at him now. "How long?" He opened his mouth again. Closed it. Brianna took a small step forward. "It started after you left for Dubai," she said. Her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to happen. We didn't plan this." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Of course not. Nobody ever plans to sleep with their sister's fiancé. You just trip, fall, and accidentally land in his bed." "Don't do this," my father muttered from the corner. I hadn't even noticed him there, but now he was rubbing his temples like I was the problem. I'm sorry, Dad, am I making this uncomfortable for you? I snapped. Imagine how uncomfortable I felt standing there like a fool while people congratulated the two people who gutted my life behind my back. Brianna finally started crying. Big, silent tears that I used to believe meant guilt. Now, they just looked like cowardice. It wasn't just sex, she said softly. We fell in love. Those words lit something in me. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just nodded, slowly. I see. I walked up to the gift table and picked one, wrapped in soft pink paper with glittery ribbon. There was a card tucked neatly on top. I opened it. To baby girl Wells, I read aloud, "May you always feel the love of a family who waited so long for you." I looked up at my mom. You bought this? She didn't answer. Her silence was louder than any confession. I tore the wrapping paper open. A delicate baby blanket fell into my hands. Embroidered along the edge in tiny pink thread were the words, "Welcome home, sweetheart." I held it up like evidence in a courtroom. You bought this for the child my fiancé made with my sister while I was paying the mortgage on our condo? My mother opened her mouth. But I didn't let her speak. You know what? I said, folding the blanket with sharp, deliberate movements. I'm glad I came home early. Because now I see all of you for what you are. I turned back to Derek and Brianna. Enjoy the miracle. Because you won't be seeing another dime from me. I dropped the blanket back onto the table and walked out. Not a single person stopped me. No one tried to follow. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying and freeing. I wasn't part of that family anymore. I didn't remember the drive back into town. My mind was a haze. My hands gripping the steering wheel like I was trying to hold myself together by force. The trees lining the road blurred past, but I couldn't tell you what season it was. Or what song was on the radio. I found a hotel a few blocks from the city center, nothing fancy, but it had walls and a bed, and that was enough. The receptionist gave me a second glance. Probably noticing the way I was blinking too much, like I hadn't cried yet but was dangerously close. She didn't ask questions. Just handed me the key. I walked into the room like a ghost and closed the door behind me. The moment it clicked shut, the weight of everything I'd seen collapsed onto me like a building crumbling from the inside out. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I just sank, onto the edge of the bed, then to my knees. My body folded in on itself like paper. The tears came. Hot. Humiliating. Endless. How could they? How could she? How could he? I thought of the quiet nights on FaceTime with Derek while I was in Dubai. I thought of the photos Brianna had sent me, selfies with our dog, updates on our parents. Little things to make me feel connected. It was all fake. Every single word. A performance. And I had applauded it. But even as I cried, something else started to build in the pit of my stomach, resolve. They didn't just betray me. They humiliated me. They built a new life right inside the one I had created for them. And worse, they expected me to accept it. I stood up and walked to the desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the folder I'd kept locked and encrypted for months. Yes, I had suspected. I wasn't a fool. Before Dubai, Derek had been distant, always busy, always tired. Brianna had been, off. Overcompensating. So I'd started documenting everything. Receipts. Wire transfers. Emails. Property titles. Even a voice memo Derek left once by accident, meant for someone else. I had proof. Enough to bury them both. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I had only used once before. Miss Clark, said the voice on the other end. This is Alex Rivera. I was wondering when I'd hear from you again. I want to start the process, I said, my voice cold, almost mechanical. Dividing assets. Filing breach of promise. Dissolution of shared finances. All of it. There was a pause. I assume something happened. You could say that, I replied. Turns out my fiancé got my sister pregnant. While living in the house I paid for. The lawyer exhaled. Understood. We'll begin immediately. And make sure it's airtight, I added. I don't want him touching a single cent that came from me. You have more than enough documentation, he said. This won't be a problem. I ended the call and stared out the window. Below, the city was alive. Cars moved, people walked, lights blinked. And up here, in this room that smelled like cheap lavender soap, I felt more awake than I had in months. They had taken everything from me, my home, my trust, my sense of belonging. Now it was my turn. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I was well rested, far from it. I barely slept, tossing and turning in a bed that wasn't mine, in a life that no longer felt familiar. But something inside me had shifted. Like a steel rod had formed down my spine overnight. I wasn't going to cry today. Not anymore. I had work to do. By 9 a.m. I was sitting in Alex Rivera's downtown office, crisp folder in hand. He greeted me with a firm handshake and a quiet nod. No small talk. Just the kind of energy I needed. We reviewed everything. All the bank statements, shared investments, the property deed for the condo, which was, thankfully, in my name only. I'd paid for the down payment, the renovations, the furniture. Derek hadn't contributed a single dime. Breach of promise? Alex asked, skimming a document. Yes, I said without hesitation. He proposed. I changed my career track. Turned down a firm in London to stay here with him. I even took a reduced salary to help fund his startup. Which is now technically bankrupt. But I still have proof I injected $48,000 into it. Wire transfers. Contracts. All with my name on them. Alex leaned back, nodding slowly. This is going to be very straightforward. He'll have no claim to your assets. If anything, you could sue for damages. Let's do it. He paused. You're sure? I'm done giving him second chances. I want him legally, financially, and emotionally removed from my life. I signed the documents, each stroke of the pen felt like cutting through the ropes that had been strangling me. Then came the best part, freezing the joint account. We drafted the notice and filed it immediately. Derek wouldn't be able to withdraw a single cent. Not without my permission. I left the office with a copy of the motion to dissolve any shared ownership of property, and another document revoking his power of attorney, which, stupidly, I had given him last year when I traveled overseas. That wouldn't happen again. By the time I returned to the hotel, my phone had already lit up with missed calls and messages from Derek. Voicemails too. Vanessa, hey. I saw something weird when I tried to access our account. Can we talk? Vanessa, please don't do this. I know you're hurt, but we can fix this. I still love you. I never wanted you to find out that way. Each message made my skin crawl. He still thought he had a say in how this would play out. I poured myself a glass of water. Sat on the bed, and typed a single text. Talk to my lawyer. Alex Rivera. I won't be speaking to you again. Then I blocked him. It was a strange kind of peace. Not the warm, comforting kind. But the cold, quiet calm that follows a hurricane, the knowledge that the worst had hit, but I was still standing. That evening, I walked the city streets alone. Not running from anything. Not chasing anyone. Just reclaiming space. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally, truly, in control. 3 days passed. 3 full days of silence from my end, and chaos from his. Derek tried everything. Emails. Messages on apps I forgot I had. Even a handwritten note delivered to the front desk of my hotel, which I promptly tossed in the trash unopened. I had nothing to say to a man who had destroyed years of trust in a matter of months. But desperation makes fools bold. On the 4th afternoon, I was sitting at a cafe just a block from the hotel. Sipping an espresso and flipping through architectural sketches for a client pitch. The last thing I expected was him. Standing across from me, unshaven, eyes bloodshot. Clothes wrinkled like he hadn't slept. Vanessa. I didn't flinch. I didn't look up right away. I finished my note, capped my pen, then slowly met his gaze. You're not supposed to be here. He sat down anyway. Uninvited. I needed to see you, he said. You blocked me. You won't answer. I didn't know what else to do. That's the thing about consequences, Derek, I said, voice even. They don't come with a customer service line. He sighed, rubbing his hands over his face. Look, I get it. I messed up. But this, freezing the account, cutting me out of everything, it's too much. I blinked. Too much? He leaned in. We were supposed to be building a life together. Yes, I made a mistake. But you don't have to ruin me. And there it was. Not remorse. Not accountability. Just fear of losing comfort. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. You didn't just make a mistake, Derek. You lied. You slept with my sister while living in the house I paid for. You let me go halfway across the world thinking we were building something real. Meanwhile, you were playing house with my flesh and blood. He looked away. It wasn't planned. Oh. Don't start with that, I cut in. You had plenty of chances to stop. To tell the truth. To choose decency. But you didn't. Because it was easier to let me be the breadwinner while you lived like a king behind my back. I was lonely, he muttered. You were never here. Because I was paying our mortgage, Derek. My voice was sharp now. You think I wanted to spend nights alone in hotel rooms in Dubai, working through time zones and jet lag? I did that for us. And you spent that time ruining everything. He finally went quiet. Good. Because I wasn't done. You know what's funny? I said, sitting back. I thought coming home early would make you happy. I bought your favorite pie on the way to the cabin. Apple crumble. The one you always beg for. It's probably still rotting in the car. That caught him off guard. His mouth opened, but no words came. And you're sitting here, I continued, talking to me like I'm the one who's being unfair. I'm not asking for money, he said, softer now. I don't want to lose everything. You already did. I stood up, collecting my things. You lost me. You lost the condo. You lost your comfort. And soon, you'll lose the illusion that you can always land on your feet. He looked up. Eyes hollow. Vanessa, please. I took a breath. Calm. Final. Talk to my lawyer. And don't ever show up like this again. And just like that, I walked away. I didn't look back. Because I knew, his spiral was only beginning. It didn't take long for the spiral to begin. Without my income to sustain him, Derek's world started collapsing brick by brick, quiet at first. Then louder with each passing day. He hadn't worked in months. His startup had bled out long ago, and he never bothered to get a real job because I made things too easy. Not anymore. The condo association emailed me first, mortgage payments overdue. Derek hadn't sent a single cent since I froze the account. Good. I sent them a notice. Formally reclaiming full possession of the property under sole ownership. My lawyer had already filed the paperwork. Derek had no legal grounds to stay, not even squatters' rights. The eviction date was set for Friday. And I made sure to be there. It was raining that morning. Light and steady, the kind of drizzle that soaked your hair no matter how fast you moved. I didn't bring an umbrella. I didn't need one. I wanted to feel it. Every drop. Every cold sting. When I arrived, chaos was already unfolding. Boxes sat haphazardly on the front lawn. A half-dismantled crib leaned against the porch railing. The door stood open, and inside, I saw Derek arguing with the sheriff's officer, red-faced and panicked. Brianna was standing a few steps away, clutching her belly with one hand and her phone with the other. She looked thinner, paler, like reality had finally caught up with her. When Derek spotted me, he stormed out. You're really doing this? He shouted, soaked, hair plastered to his forehead. You're actually throwing us out? I crossed my arms. I'm not throwing anyone out. I'm taking back what was mine to begin with. This is cruelty, he snapped. You're vindictive. I tilted my head, smiling faintly. Oh no, Derek. This is restraint. You want to see me destroyed, he spat. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. You destroyed yourself the second you thought I wouldn't find out. The second you decided betrayal was easier than honesty. Behind him. Brianna finally spoke. Vanessa, please. Can't we talk? We didn't expect it to end like this. I turned to her. You know what, Brianna? You once told me I was too focused on control. Too guarded. Too serious. I paused, then added. But that seriousness is why I'm standing on my own 2 feet while you're begging me not to throw you out into the rain. Her lips trembled. She looked down. The officer stepped outside. Mr. Wells, you have 5 more minutes to vacate the premises. Derek's mouth hung open. We have nowhere to go. I shrugged. Then I guess it's time you learned how the rest of us survive without someone funding our lives. You don't have to do this, he whispered. Oh, but I do. He stared at me for a long second, dripping wet, shoulders sagging, and I saw it. That flicker in his eyes. The realization that I wasn't coming to save him this time. He picked up a half-soaked box and kicked it down the porch stairs, muttering curses under his breath. I didn't flinch. Didn't offer a hand. Didn't offer sympathy. Because every drop of rain soaking his skin, every gust of wind rattling that porch, was a reminder. He had built this storm. And I had merely let it in. A few weeks passed. Quiet ones. I went back to work. Took on a new architectural project, a community center for single mothers, of all things. Fitting, I thought. I got used to mornings without messages, nights without apologies. Weekends without questions. My silence had become a sanctuary. But karma wasn't done. One rainy Tuesday, I was grabbing a coffee before heading to the construction site when I ran into Naomi. A mutual friend. Or, former mutual friend. She looked unsure whether to approach me, but then she offered a cautious smile. Vanessa, hey. You look good. I nodded. I feel good. She glanced down at her coffee, then said, You, heard about Brianna? My brows lifted. No. What now? Naomi looked almost guilty delivering it. She filed for separation, she said. She's demanding child support. Said Derek hasn't been able to hold a job since the eviction, and she doesn't want to raise the baby alone. I blinked once. Then again. And then I laughed. A raw, shocked, full-belly laugh that startled the barista behind the counter. She left him? I asked, grinning. After everything? Naomi nodded slowly. Apparently. She thought he'd pull it together once you were out of the picture. She thought he'd finally step up. Oh, honey, I said, shaking my head. If he didn't step up for me. The woman who built him a life, what made her think she'd be the exception? I took a long sip of my latte and leaned in a little. Tell me, does he even have money to pay her? Naomi bit her lip. Not really. I heard he's been bouncing between odd jobs. One week he's delivering furniture, next he's trying to bartend in Brooklyn. I let out a low whistle. Wow. That's tragic. I said it without a drop of sincerity. But what struck me more than the drama was the irony. Brianna was now doing to Derek exactly what he had done to me, demanding financial support. Walking away when things got hard, using the child as leverage. Poetic, really. He's completely broke, Naomi added, almost whispering. Some people think he might move back in with Rosa. Of course. His mother. The woman who once told me I worked too much and didn't nurture him enough. Maybe now she'd learn how exhausting it is to nurture a grown man with the emotional maturity of a houseplant. I looked out the cafe window, watching the cars rush by in the rain. And I realized, I didn't feel anger anymore. Not even toward Brianna. Just, detachment. She'd chosen her path. And now she'd get to walk it alone, too. You know, I said, standing to leave, some people say karma takes too long. But in this case, she was right on time. Naomi smiled awkwardly. Yeah. I guess she was. I walked out of the cafe with a lightness in my chest. Not the giddy kind, but the deep, grounding kind you get when you know you've finally closed a door that should have been locked long ago. And the best part? I hadn't lifted a single finger. Months went by. Seasons changed. I barely noticed. I was too busy rebuilding. Not from the ashes. That would imply the old life was worth saving. No, what I built now was entirely new. Mine. No shadows. No compromises. I closed on a sleek loft in the city, a space with high ceilings, exposed brick, and sunlight that spilled across my hardwood floors every morning like quiet gold. I filled it with things I loved. Paintings I actually liked. Furniture no one else picked. A kitchen that finally stayed clean because I didn't have a man-child leaving empty takeout containers everywhere. I changed my number. Deleted old voicemails. Cut ties with anyone who said, but he was trying, or family is still family. I owed no one an explanation. No one except myself. One day, as I was heading home from a site meeting, I got a message from my lawyer. Derek's appeal for financial compensation was denied. Full divorce finalized. You're completely free. I stared at the screen for a long second. Then I smiled. Not the vengeful smile I wore months ago. Not the tight one that barely masked pain. No, this one was soft. Real. The kind of smile you only give yourself when you've survived the worst and no longer need to prove it to anyone. Later that week, I visited the newly completed community center for women and families, my team's biggest project to date. As I stood in the atrium, watching women of all backgrounds walk through the doors, some carrying toddlers, others holding fresh job applications, I felt something settle inside me. this was what I was meant to build. Not just spaces. Not just structures. But foundations. The kind that couldn't be shaken by betrayal or buried under someone else's needs. I ran into Naomi again not long after that. She told me Derek had moved back in with his mother. Brianna had taken him to court, again, and won. He now owed back payments he couldn't afford. His name had become a punchline in their old circle. But I barely reacted. Because by then, I didn't care. I had outgrown that version of my life, and everyone in it. One quiet Saturday morning, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea. Legs tucked under me, the city humming softly below. The air smelled like summer coming early. And for the first time in years, I didn't wake up wondering what I lacked. I didn't ache for approval. Didn't crave closure. Didn't need revenge. Because I had something better, peace. Not the kind someone else gives you. The kind you give yourself when you choose you. And as I sat there, watching the sun rise over the skyline I helped shape, one thought came to me with perfect clarity. He may have broken my past, but he had no say in my future. What was your favorite moment in Vanessa's story? Was it the confrontation, the eviction, or the quiet moment of final peace? Drop a comment below, we want to hear what part made you feel empowered.